Chapter 5 of the Manless Worlds by Murray Leinster. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5 The Needed Fuel. The Starshine had a mass of about 200 tons and an intrinsic velocity of so many miles per second. When the field went on, her mass dropped almost to zero, but her kinetic energy remained the same. Her velocity went up almost to infinity, and the universe went mad. The vision ports showed stark lunacy. There were stars, but they were the stars of a madman's dream. They formed and dissolved into nothingness in instants too brief for estimate. For fractions of microseconds, they careened upon impossible trajectories across the vision port's field of view. Now a monstrous blue-white sun glared in terribly, seemingly almost touching the ship. An instant later, there was utter blackness all about. Then colossal flaring globes ringed in the starshine, and shriveling heat poured in. Then there was a blue, watery seeming cosmos all around like the vision of an underwater world, and dim shapes seemed to swim in it, and then stars again. And then, it was stark, gibbering madness. But Kim reached the instrument board. With the end of the last morsel of power, he had ceased to have weight and had floated clear of the floor and everything else. By the crazy, changing light, he sighted himself, and when he touched a sidewall, flung himself toward the now dark bank of instruments. He caught hold, fumbled desperately, and through the switch a radiation relay should have thrown. And then the madness ended. There was stillness. There was nothing anywhere. There was no weight within the ship, nor light, nor any sound, save the heavy breathing of Kim and the mare of Stideham. The vision ports showed nothing. Looking carefully, with eyes losing the dazzle of now vanished suns, one could see infinitely faint, infinitely distant luminosities. The starshine was somewhere between galaxies, somewhere in an unspeakable gulf between islands of space, in the dark voids which are the abomination of desolation. There were small clankings aft. The outer airlock door went shut. A little later the inner door opened. And then Kim swam fiercely through the weightlessness and clung to Donna, still in her spacesuit, unable to speak for his emotion. The mare of Stideham arose in the darkness, which was the interior of the starshine, and the outer cosmos for tens of thousands of light years all about. "What's this?" he rumbled wrathfully as he floated without weight in darkness. "Is this what happens when a man dies? It'll be frightfully tedious." Donna now had the faceplate of her helmet open. She kissed Kim hungrily. "I brought you something," she said unsteadily. "I'm not sure what, but something. They've separate engines to power their generators on that ship, and there were tanks I thought were fuel tanks." "Space," roared the mayor of Stideham forward. "Who's that talking? Am I dead? Is this Hades?" "You're not dead yet," Kim called to him. "I'll tell you in a minute if you will be." There were no emergency lights in the ship, but Donna's suit was necessarily so equipped. She turned on lights, and Kim looked at the two objects she had brought. "My dear," he told her, "you did it. A little fuel tank with gallons in it, and a complete catalyzer. By the size of it, one of their beams uses an engine big enough for 50 ships like this." Clutching at every projection, he made his way to the engine room. Donna followed. "I'm glad, Kim," she said unsteadily, "that I was able to do something important. You always do everything." "The heck I do," he said, "but anyhow." He worked on the tank. She'd sheared it off with a tiny atomic torch, and the severed fuel line had closed of itself, of course. He spliced it into the Starshine's fuel line and waited eagerly for the heavy viscous fluid to reach the catalyzer and then the engines. "We'll be all right now?" asked Donna hopefully. "We were on transmitter drive for 5 minutes at a guess. You know what that means." She caught her breath. "Kim, we're lost." To say that we're lost is a masterpiece of understatement, he said wryly. At transmitter speed, we could cross the first galaxy in a 10,000th of a second, which means roughly 100,000 light years in a 10,000th of a second, and we traveled for 300 seconds or thereabouts. What are our chances of finding our way back? Oh, Kim, she cried softly, it's unthinkable. He watched the meters. Suddenly the engines caught. For the fraction of a second they ran irregularly, then all was normal. There was light, there was weight. An indignant roar came from forward. If this is Hades! They went to the control room. The mayor of Stideham sat on the floor, staring incredulously about him. As they entered, he grinned sheepishly. I was floating in the air and couldn't see a thing. And then the lights came on and the floor smacked me. What happened? Where are we? Kim went to the instrument board and plugged in the heaters. Already the vision ports had begun to frost, and the air purifier and the other normal devices of a spaceship. What happened is simple enough, said Kim. The last atom of power on board the ship here threw us into a transmitter field drive, and when that field is established, it doesn't take power to maintain it. So we started to move. There's a relay that should have stopped us, but there wasn't enough power left to work it. So we traveled for probably 5 minutes on transmitter drive. We went a long way, eh? Said the mayor comfortably. We did, said Kim grimly. To Ades and from its sun is nearly 90 million miles, 8 light minutes. Remember? The first galaxy is 100,000 light years across. Light travels 100,000 years going 90 million miles every 8 minutes to cross it. The Starshine travels 100,000 light years in the 10,000th part of a second. In 1 second, 1 billion light years. The most powerful telescope in the galaxy cannot gather light from so far away. But we went at least 300 times farther. 300 billion light years plus or minus 30 billions more. We went beyond the farthest that men have ever seen and kept on beyond the farthest that men have ever thought of. The light from the island universes we can see through the ports has never yet reached the first galaxy since time began. It hasn't had time. We're not only beyond the limits that men have guessed at, we're beyond their wildest imagining. The mayor of Stideham blinked at him. Then he got up and peered out the vision ports. Dim remote luminosities were visible, each one a galaxy of 1,000 million suns. Ha, grunted the mayor. Not much to look at. At that, now what? Kim spread out his hands and looked at Donna. Turning about and trying to go back, he said, would be like starting from an individual grain of sand on a desert and flying 1,000 miles and then trying to fly back to that grain of sand again. That's how the first galaxy stacks up. Donna took a deep breath. You'll find a way, Kim. And anyhow, she smiled at him shakily. Whether or not they ever saw another human being, she was prepared to take what came with him. The possibility of being lost amid the uncountable island universes of the cosmos had been known to them both from the beginning of the use of the Starshine. We'll take some pictures, Kim told her, and then sit down on a planet and figure things out. He set to work making a map of all the island universes in view of the Starshine's current position, with due regard to the Starshine's course. On the relatively short jumps within a galaxy, and especially those of a few light years only, he could simply turn the ship around and come very close to its original position, the line of it anyhow. But he did not know within many billions of light years how far he had come, and he did know that an error of 100th of a second of arc would amount to millions of light years at the distance of the first galaxy. The positions of galaxies about the first were plotted only within a radius of something like 2 million light years. There had never been a point in even that. At 1,500,000 times that distance, he was not likely to strike the tiny mapped area by accident. He set to work. Presently, he was examining the photographs by the enlarger for a sign of structure in one of the galaxies in view. One showed evidence of supergiant stars, which proved it the nearest. He aimed the Starshine for it. He threw the ship into transmitter drive. The galaxy was startlingly familiar when they reached it. The stellar types were normal ones, and there were star clusters and doubtless star drifts too, and Kim was wholly accustomed to astronavigation now. He simply chose a Sol-type sun, set the radiation switch to stop the little spaceship close by, aimed for it, and pressed a button. Instantly they were there. They visited 6 solar systems. They found a habitable planet in the last, a bit on the small side, but with good gravity, adequate atmosphere, and polar ice caps to assure its climate. They landed, and its atmosphere was good. The mayor of Stidham stepped out and blinked about him. "Ha," he said gruffly. "If we've come as far as you say, it was hardly worth the trip." Kim grinned. "It looks normal enough," he acknowledged, "but chemistry's the same everywhere, and plants will use chlorophyll and sunlight from a Sol-type sun. Stalks and leaves will grow anywhere, and the most efficient animals will be warm-blooded. Given similar conditions, you'll have parallel evolution everywhere." Said the mayor of Stidham. "A planet like this for each of my 4 sons to settle on now, when we've settled with those rats from Sanab." The planet was a desirable one. The Starshine had come to rest where the mountain range rose out of lush, strange, forest-covered hills, which reached away and away to a greenish sea. There was nothing in view which was altogether familiar, and nothing which was altogether strange. The mayor of Stidham stamped away to a rocky outcrop, where he would have an even better view. "Poor man," said Donna softly. "When he finds out we can never go back, and there'll be only the 3 of us here, with horrible things happen back home." But Kim's expression had suddenly become strained. "I think," he said softly, "I see a way to get back. I was thinking that a place as far away as this would be ideal for the Empire of Sanab to be moved to. True, they've murdered all the men on 19 or 20 planets, but we couldn't repair anything by murdering all of them in return. If we moved them out here, though, there'd be no other people for them to prey on. They'd regret their lost opportunities for scoundrelism, but the real penalty would be that they'd have to learn to be decent in order to survive. It's a very neat answer to the biggest problem of the war with Sanab, a post-war settlement. But we haven't any chance of getting back, have we? If we wanted to send them here, how'd we do it?" asked Kim. "By matter transmitter, of course. A receiver set up here, as there used to be one on Ades, to which a sender would be tuned. When a transmitter's tuned to a receiver, you can't miss. But our transmitter drive is just that, a transmitter which sends the ship and itself, with a part which is tuned to receive it, too. I'll set up the receiving element here for later use, and I'll tune the sender element to Ades. We'll arrive at the station, and everyone will be surprised." He paused and spoke reflectively. "A curious war, this. We've no weapons, and we arrive at a post-war settlement before we start fighting. We've decided how to keep from killing our enemies before we're sure how we'll defeat them, and I suspect that the men had better stay at home and let the women go out to battle. I'm not sure I like it." He set to work. In 12 hours, 1/2 of the transmitter drive of the Starshine had been removed and set up on the unnamed planet of a galaxy not even imagined by human beings before. In 15 hours, the Starshine, rather limpingly, went aloft. An hour later, Kim carefully tuned the transmitting part of the little ship's drive to the matter receiving station on Ades. In that way, and only in that way, the ship would inevitably arrive at the home galaxy of humanity, and he pushed a button. It arrived at the matter transmitter station on Ades instead of descending from the skies, and the people on Ades were surprised. End of chapter 5.